Hi, this video is about child abuse in Britain and also the police and authority corruption related to that issue. And I'm going to leave you the links to what I'm going to show today. And one of the links is this 8 common myths about child abuse. And I'm not going to read you the whole report. I do suggest that you read it because the information is correct and it is important. But the one section that I do wish to share today is this. Hundreds of innocent men and women have been falsely accused and sent to prison for molesting children. And basically this section explains that actually the majority of children never report abuse. So it says only 3% of all cases of child abuse and only 20% of rapes involving children are ever reported to the police. Though the research reveals that a few cases reported to authorities, relatively few accused offenders are ever investigated or charged. For instance, the first national incident study found that a criminal action was taken in only 24% of substantiated cases of child sexual abuse. So, and the other section is this part. Children tend to exaggerate or are prone to making false accusations. Again, this study shows researchers examined 28 cases in which prepubescent children have tested positive for a sexually transmitted disease by forensically accepted procedures. To be included in the study, the children had to have presented for a physical problem with no prior disclosure or suspicion of sexual abuse and were required to have adequate expressive language capabilities. So these are 28 children that have been examined by researchers for their study, and all of them have obviously had sexual contact with somebody because they've got a sexually transmitted disease, and also other physical problems in relation to sexual abuse, even though there's been no disclosure by the child or any adult about sexual abuse related to that child. And also the children were perfectly capable of articulating what had happened to them. Each of the 28 children was interviewed by a social worker trained in abuse disclosure techniques and use of anatomically correct dolls. Only 12 of the 28, that's 43%, of the abused children interviewed gave any verbal confirmation of sexual contact. Only 12. Now that is less than half, and these are children who it's known they've had sexual contact with somebody, and they're being asked to talk about that, invited to talk about it by professionals, and only 12 of them then even disclosed what had happened to them. And this is a serious problem with abused children, because a lot of them just block out. Children who are repeatedly sexually abused often they can't remember. They've blocked those memories out. They just block them out because it's something that happens that's horrible, and they block it out. It's usually only children who say, children, siblings in a family who are being abused, who will tend to remember because they'll talk to each other about it, and they will actually remember. But often children who are abused are isolated, and they have nobody to talk to, and their mind, in order to stay sane, it is a mechanism. In order to stay sane, the children block it out. And some of the children also suffer from, very commonly, what's known as Stockholm Syndrome, especially if they're being abused by close family members or family friends or parents or even a sibling, because they have an emotional bonding with their abuser, and they're afraid of getting their abuser into trouble. And children often tend to be more on that side. And because of this, and I think, we have to accept these studies, because it's been proven over and over and over again that, children aren't reporting crimes against themselves. They're not exaggerating. In fact, they're minimising and denying rather than embellishing or exaggerating. So, as far as the law goes, there does need to be an onus of proof on the suspects, really. I think the risk that some people are going to be falsely accused against the risk that people who commit crimes against children pose to society at large. Really, we need to accept that the greater weight of balance of evidence falls in favour of believing children, believing a child, and convicting charging and convicting the suspects. I think not all children show any evidence that they've been sexually abused. But if a child is saying, this man did this to me, I think for police to turn round and say, well, there's not enough evidence, it's just not good enough. I think we have to, put emphasis of belief on the child, and we need to arrest these people. I know a lot of people are very angry and, they want to shoot paedophiles in the head and do all kinds of things. As a survivor myself, I can understand that reaction and empathise with it as well. And I do feel great rage towards these people. But I do understand that what these people try to rob me of, and what they rob children of, is our humanity and our empathy and our capacity to experience happiness and autonomy. And so I look back through history and I just realise that the punishment, really, I think that's what's created this psychology we're dealing with today, that's really reared its ugly head in our worlds. And we need to chop that head off in a spiritual, psychological sense. And the only way we're going to do that successfully, I think, is by addressing the problem with law and not punishing these people, because no amount of punishment is going to stop them. And I don't see what is to be gained from taking out one's anger and cruelty on these people. They are to be, yes, absolutely reviled and also pitted because of what they've done to children. But I think a lot of them really, they need help or therapy, you know, and a lot of them can't be helped, so therefore they need to live in closed communities and be kept under constant watch, because we can't have these people at large in society, because they do seriously abuse children, and they do kill children as well, you know. Now, I think without child protection directives that give children legal guardians and put onus of proof on the suspects as opposed to the victim, I think we'll get a lot further in arresting more people than is presently happening. And, you know, we have to accept that it's just a major, major problem. You know, the amount of children that go missing from care, for example, and police never find. Now, the police could say, oh, well, you know, we just haven't got enough resources to deal with these missing children, you know. But then when you look at the evidence, and I'm just going to take you through a few headlines here, you know. There we go. Yeah, you know, and the Pakistan community are very angry because the police didn't do their job. You know, and I must say the Pakistani community have responded to the discovery that members of their community were abusing young girls and, you know, sexually abusing children and even plying them with drugs. They are angry with the police for not promptly investigating, because a lot of the crimes were reported, and as the victim survivors report, they were made to feel like they were wayward girls, you know, that it was them that was in the wrong, and that was why they'd been abused, because they were naughty children who'd put themselves at risk. So the Pakistani community's response to that has been, you know, well, why didn't you stop these people? Because at the same time, that community has had to live with them amongst them as well, unaware, you see. And obviously, the good people are really disgusted by it. And their response has been exactly really what myself and many other British people expected the suspects and all the people of Hampstead and Camden. We expected this response from them to say, why is the public attention on our community now? Why didn't the police promptly investigate and stop this? You know, reassure people either it's happening or it isn't happening. Now, because they didn't investigate, suspicions fallen on our whole community. You know, they were not up in arms. No, instead, they've been suspects have been, you know, they brought prosecutions against people that have exposed, that have made the case public. So, you know, it's something that this thing, it isn't unique to any particular faith, race or culture. It's something that is a problem in our world. And I've written a report recently, a government that I've sent to the government, I've sent to the House of Lords, the NSPCC, the Children's Commission, just explaining that this problem, it can be addressed in one way by quickly identifying victims and arresting suspects. But really we need to be addressing it on a much deeper level than that, because that is not going to stop the next generation of abusers arising, because obviously our world is operating in such a way as to feed this psychology that has become prolific. And so we need to stop that, and I've suggested changes in our education system, in our social system, in the system of family courts. I think a very big problem with all of it is the secrecy that's involved, and I think we have to stop this secrecy. It has to end. We just can't have secrets about crime and criminals. And the idea that victims should be ashamed because they've been abused, again, that has to end, because it's just burdening people with shame and guilt, innocent victims with shame and guilt. And they feel they can't talk about it to people, and it's become like a taboo subject. But nobody has any problem saying that the car's been stolen or their home was vandalised. You know, so this idea that sex, it's true, sex is a private thing. It should be. But when it's being forced on people, when it's being, sex is a criminal act, then it's not a private thing, because the police is a public force, and when people turn to a public force, that then becomes a public issue. And there should be no amount of secrecy around it whatsoever. And I think one of the problems is that suspects, which, as I say, although onus of proof should be on the suspect, which basically means a suspect is assumed as guilty until they're proven innocent. But that does not mean to say we believe the suspect is guilty. It just means the law says that you've been accused, so now you have to be thoroughly investigated. And if there's even a shred of evidence to support this child's testimony, if the testimony is believable, which, again, how can a child's testimony ever be said it's unbelievable unless there are things in it that just don't happen during sex? If a child of 8 or 9 is describing, sexual activity that somebody's committed against them, it's very easy for people, especially professionals, to suspect it if a child is lying, or if somebody has coerced them to lie, because people can do things like that. But I think these, as I say, that's going to be only in a very, very slight minority of cases. And I think we can't keep swinging in favour of the minority of innocently accused and charged adults when we weigh that against a majority of children suffering severe levels of abuse who never even report that to anybody. And I think there needs to be more done, especially in investigating associates of abusers, because it's known that these people often operate in groups. There are lone individuals out there as well, but a lot of people, they do operate in groups and gangs, and we know that they have been operating in groups and gangs within British authorities, and we know that counsellors are involved in that, police are involved in it, we know social services are involved in it. So when you've got authorities, members of authorities collectively committing crimes against children or covering up crimes against children, then, and you've got no child protection directives really in place, which we haven't. It's all down to the discretion of individuals and local authorities. There's no set procedures really. You know, I think that we have to really take it seriously. If we find a police officer, now this man was retired and he served as a police officer and he was found guilty of molesting a 9-year-old girl. Now, if this is one of his victims, are we seriously going to believe that he only molested one child? And especially when, you know, the Children's Commission, their report has shown that for every child identified as an abuse victim, there's another 8 out there unidentified. Sorry, there's another 7 out there unidentified. Only 1 in 8 are identified by authorities. So, you know, according to the statistics, this man is likely to have sexually abused another 7 children who have never come forward. Are they one of the missing children? Because every year in Britain 2,000 children go missing from care permanently, and that includes 180 babies under the age of 1 as well. So, you know, when we think about these things, I think we have to connect the dots. You know, we have to be adult, intelligent, and connect the dots, and we have to do it in favour of the children as opposed to trying to protect possibly innocent suspects. The fact is that people get wrongly convicted for crimes, and it happens so often, you know, especially in the American justice system. And it does happen. People get wrongly convicted of crimes, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stop convicting people, arresting and convicting people for crimes, because a few of them are falsely accused and are wrongfully incarcerated. It's a terrible thing that happens, and that is down to often it's down to lack of legal support for suspects. But at the end of the day, like I say, we're not going to stop arresting criminals and convicting them on the strength that a few are wrongly accused. And I think we definitely cannot take that attitude to victims of child abuse. I think if a child comes forward and says, you know, this person did this to me, they should be taken seriously. They need to be believed. And, you know, and suspects need to be immediately investigated. At the moment, there's a gap between a child reporting abuse and investigations. Now, that's serious when you've got police involved in child abuse. And I think what has been happening is that the very few children that have reported abuse have actually connected police with paedophiles, and who've then been taken into cover of a gang, you see. So they've actually been subverting the process of children reporting abuse to police being aware of who the paedophiles are, and then connecting them with other paedophiles in authority, you see. So, you know, a child going to a police station and they've reported abuse, to a police officer who himself secretly is a paedophile, you know, looks at indecent images of children. And now he's being told that this little boy's coming and saying he's been sexually abused by a carer in his local authority care home, or he's been abused by a foster carer. And the police brush that aside and say, well, you know, we haven't got enough evidence to prosecute, and really you're better off just, you know, admitting that it didn't happen, because otherwise things could get really bad for you. You don't want it on your record, do you, that you've been abused? It means you won't be able to have children, because, you know, they take children off people who've been abused. I mean, all kinds of things can be said to a child to make them think, alright then, yeah, maybe I should just forget about it, and to retract. Or for police just simply to say, no, it didn't happen, but we're going to move you to another children's home instead. But now police have a contact in that children's home, and the police have connections with councillors, and the councillors have connections with MPs, and suddenly you've got a line there to pass a bucket, to pass a child along, haven't you? And it is the bucket of fun for them. Oh, I've got a connection with somebody who works in such and such children's home, really, have you? Oh, alright then, yeah. Can we have a couple of teenage lads for our party, please? And then the children are abused, and then they're killed. And then the foster carers reported to the police that, oh, the child's ran away, we don't know where they've gone. And nobody ever finds that child. That is just so... I find it impossible to live with. I am finding it difficult to... I can't tolerate it. That's why I make these videos. I know people think I'm mad, but I don't know what else to do. I don't just make videos. I do write. I spend a lot of time. I do, you know, detailed research, and I do present it. I do send it to the authorities. I put it in their face. This is the evidence. You have to do something, please. Because these risks, loopholes, are too serious. And I think we need to address this issue thoroughly in our lifetimes, because, as I've said before, you know, we are the front line. The living front line, the living dividing line now, this generation between this world and the next. And the next world will be whatever humanity of today decides it shall be. And that will happen either by our actions or our inactions. And if we keep remaining inactive, things are just going to get worse and worse and worse. Because we're talking about a consciousness here, you know, a consciousness of abuse and demeaning of the child. And I've written to the MOJ and various authorities on numerous occasions demanding that the legal term minor be removed from defining a child. And it's a fact, you know, I've spoken to cared for children, people who've been through the care system, about it, and those children who are taken into authority care, are going to see the word minor in relation to themselves more than any other child. They're going to see it on court reports. It's just that word is going to be there, minor, 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 in relation to themselves. And I think it is a spell. It is a word spell, and it does cast a spell on the consciousness with the way that we view children, the way we perceive them, our attitudes to them. You know, when you've got a parliament and they're going to discuss children's issues, and though that all of that's described as the minor concern, You see where this goes. And it is obvious that, you know, children are a minor concern. You know, police officer working in sex abuse unit, in court charged with child sex offences. Again, this absolutely proves what I'm saying, is that these people who infiltrate the police and other organisations, because, you know, they are attracted to these areas of employment in the same way you lone paedophiles attracted to a children's playground. And as I've stated in my report, my most recent report, the only difference between your lone paedophile in a dirty raincoat hanging around a schoolyard and a paedophile professional is that the paedophile professional had opportunity and means to find legitimate employment in areas that is going to put them into contact with children. And they also are getting paid and have social status, professional social status of that to boot. Now, again, I think we need to think about the very fact that people who are academically educated and trained to working with children, they know exactly what they're doing to those children on a much deeper level, because they you know, a police officer working in a sex abuse unit, he's had to go through training to know about sex abuse, to know about handling children who've been sexually abused. But all of it has just washed over his head. He's come out of that system with a piece of paper saying, yes, he can work with children, and he's trained and educated in working with abused children in a police sex abuse unit. And yet, he can abuse a child. So, you know, again, I've made this point in my report, because how can that be? How can it be that somebody who's been trained and educated in how to help children and talk to children who are reporting sexual abuse can actually use his profession and his job as a means, not just to identify possible future victims for himself and others, but also to put him in contact with people who are abusers, who also have access to children. You know, and this is what I'm talking about, the psychology. There's a psychology there. And it is a serious problem. It's a serious problem because, as I say, no amount of education has stopped that person who's obviously grown up with a capacity to develop a desire to sexually abuse children. We're also having children, the abused children, growing up with a capacity to suffer abuse. And, you know, the idea that every person who's been sexually abused is going to end up abusing children, that is another myth, because the majority of sexually abused children, over 68%, are female, and the majority of child sex abuse victims who go on to re-abuse are male. And even then, among those males, there's quite a low percentage who were sexually abused themselves as children, though these days a lot of them claim that they were, and in some instances it is true, but in a lot it's just an excuse. You know, there's something happening that has made children a commodity, and it's to do with this thrill associated with having rare pleasures. And we do know that the richest people like to feel that their wealth has given them extra privileges, and suddenly they want to have sex with children. It's become, and it's obviously earning money, it's giving people promotions. There's so many people profiting in every which way, and we know that illegal drugs are all involved in that as well. And here's another one. We know that here's another one. Now, for every person like him who's working in the police, we must know that he wasn't the only one in his force. When Clive Driscoll investigating children being abused and murdered from Lambeth Children's Home, children being handed over to abusive adoptive parents, because let's face it, if that's all they've got to do to get a child out of a children's home is hand them over to adoptive parents, and then the adoptive parents can take part in a gang to abuse children, you can see how that's working. So, for everyone that's found, there must be others complicit. And as Clive Driscoll said in his book, his case was closed by senior officers. So the higher up you go, obviously the more prolific this psychology is. And as I say, we're not going to get rid of it by, nailing them all to a stake. And I think that doesn't help children to witness that kind of horror either. Such people have a problem. And I think the problem is that they are brought up in this world, and this world has got a problem with children. It's got a problem with being able to define a child as a developing human being, a developing psychology, and not just a growing body. As identifying them as very important persons, because they are our future. But instead, they've been labelled minors. And we look at the attitude to women in this country as well, which is still, the sexualisation. It's just sex everywhere. And I think in that respect, although men like that, it's actually disrespectful to men, and it is an abuse of male sexuality. It's an abuse of male sensitivity to sexual media, in the sense that men are their sexuality is being exploited in a very covert way, in which they seem to be on the receiving end in a beneficial way, where the women are generally being negated and are being robbed of their rights to being seen as a human being first, and a potential sexual partner second. But the thing is that a lot of men are just seeing women as a sex object, and if they've got a chance to get away with, having sex with that person against the will. But then, for rich people, women become boring. Life gets boring. And a lot of it is down to boredom and overuse of drugs. And the need to feel one's privilege is buying oneself something of value. So suddenly children are valuable when rich people want them to have fun with. So, you know, and I was making a point the other day to a friend who was complaining, you know, because there's been this, I don't know if it's still here, this came up about the, I think it's this one, yeah, this came up about the Sun newspaper, which I'm not sharing the link to the Sun, but you know, basically the Sun newspaper had said that the headline was that she, you know, she'd had drank 10 Jaeger bombs or something, or 6 Jaeger bombs, that was it, 6 Jaeger bombs in 10 minutes, before she was brutally raped and murdered. And that was in the headline. You know, and people are rightfully very angry, and they're saying, well, what has that got to do with it if she drank 6 Jaeger bombs? You know, her college has said she was well liked, she had a caring nature, sense of humour, she was hard-working, intelligent young lady who possessed the maturity to complete all the targets she set herself, and her placement experiences. And she was, you know, she was studying in health and social care, so she's not allowed to go out and let her hair down a bit and have a few drinks, if indeed she did down 6 Jaeger bombs in 10 minutes, because, you know, we don't really know that, do we? But again, the idea is that she is somehow complicit in what happened to her because she drank 6 Jaeger bombs in 10 minutes, because she went out drinking with her friends. As if, you know, well, women, if you're going to go out drinking with your mates and get a bit drunk, well, expect to get raped and brutally murdered, because, you know, really it's your own fault, isn't it? Because let's face it, you are a sex object first, and you're a human being second, and that's how men will look at you. And newspapers like The Sun, which really, you know, it does make you wonder about women in this country, because we are supposed to be liberated now, and it does make you wonder when The Sun newspaper is still there with its page 3 and what have you, though. Apparently, I mean, I don't read it, apparently they've stopped doing the page 3, but I don't know if that is true. But at the end of the day, The Sun was the springboard for that type of what people called soft porn. And I remember, as a child, and seeing those pictures, you know, and the way men looked at them, and knowing that I'm going to grow up into a female, and one day I'm going to develop breasts, you know, and that's basically what they were, a sexual object for men to look at. Imagine what that does to the child, the female child psychology. So, you know, I think this is a very serious problem, and, you know, the amount of police that have been found guilty now, convicted, and as I say, not just police, you know, we've even got a Met Police detective, you know, and these are just a few. I mean, gosh, I could have like 3 Firefoxes open, 3 Google pages open, and just fill them with reports like this. You know, and this was a detective constable. So what chance have our children had when you look at the levels of complicity between the police and the abusers, whether the abusers are parents or carers, or whether they're counsellors or MPs or business people, you know, and then you look at the amount of complicity within the police over drug involvement with drugs rings, you know, and again I could have this whole every single tab on police's involvement with running drugs rings, and they are interrelated. You know, they're interrelated. Drugs are used in line with sexual offences, and children are regularly report being drugged or actually being hooked on drugs, you know, introduced to drugs that then they become addicted to by child abusers, and then suddenly the child is basically forced into a kind of prostitution in which you're like, oh well, if you want some more cocaine you're going to have to put up with all of this, aren't you? You have to be complicit in your own abuse. And then children feel guilty, and then they don't want to go to the police. You know, this, or children themselves who are victims of abuse are caught with drugs and then convicted. But nobody looks into, if the child says, well, I got the drugs from here and there, you know, the police don't want to know, because it might lead, the chain of investigations might lead to their own police unit. And as I say, you know, the children are losing out every single which way here, aren't they? In favour of the abusers. And, you know, this idea that criminal background checks and stuff, whatever they've now renamed them, really does not make a jot of difference. You know, it might weed out a few, but there's that many that are being raised in this society, nurtured in this culture. This culture is creating the culture of children being judged minors, women being judged as sex objects. It has become endemic, and it isn't natural. It's not a natural thing, but we've been brought up now to believe, oh well, it's always going to happen, isn't it? You know, you're always going to have it. No, I'm sorry, that is unacceptable. Really. You know, to have that attitude, I think we've got to address it. And as I say, we need to renew the whole approach to the way we think of children, how we educate them. I think the fact that children aren't educated about how to parent, they're not educated about a baby or a toddler or a child's needs. Boys aren't being educated about women's needs as mothers, as a pregnant woman, as a woman who's just given birth. You know, people are just thrown into that with barely any information whatsoever. And a lot of children, you know, are growing up, they don't have hardly any contact with children outside their age group. So, you know, children become alienated from a child, from understanding the child, from knowing what a child's needs are. Or we've never connected with anybody younger than ourselves, you see. So, you know, there's no connection then, there's no empathy, there's no understanding. And you see the same approach to elderly people. A lot of people have no empathy, no connection with elderly people, because we don't live in, the extended family has gone from most communities. So I think, you know, we do need to change our whole approach. And again, I've suggested that in the report, that our education system needs to change. We need to stop assuming that children learn best when they're all in the same age group, and that they all should, by that age, arrive at a certain standard, because, you know, that just isn't the case. Every child is different. every child learns at a slower or faster rate. It doesn't mean to say some are more intelligent than others. And I think rather than having sex education in schools where children who know each other, and they're all of the same age group, they all have to sit there and listen to things to do with sex and childbirth and that kind of thing. You know, there's a sort of jokey nervousness within it all. And a lot of that is to do with, you know, them children knowing each other and, you know, things that are said to each other afterwards, because they all know they've all been in it together, they've all learnt together, and now, you know, it becomes like an in thing, you know. Whereas I think if children were sent to a special centre where it's children from different schools, so you get children from each different school attending this centre together in order to learn the realities of life, about forming relationships, about how a baby is conceived, what happens when the baby's born, how do you look after a baby, what are a baby's needs, what are a toddler's needs, what are a child's needs, how do you relate to them. You know, all of this needs to be taught in a much more serious way, and with a much more serious attitude from those who are teaching it, you know. Because I remember at school doing sex education, it was all a bit jovial and a bit, oh, you know, and this is how you put a Johnny on, you know, with a broom handle. And stuff like this. It was basically warning us about sexual diseases and warning us not to get pregnant. So, and I do think that when people do understand the difficulties associated with childbirth, with pregnancy, childbirth, raising a child, it will make both males and females think twice before willy-nilly just getting involved sexually with one another, never mind anybody older than themselves. And it will, I think, help boys to feel have more self-respect for themselves about who they're going to connect with and who they might choose to be a mother of their child, rather than seeing it as an exploitation. Oh yeah, I managed to have a bit of fun there with her, right, I'll throw her away, oh I want her now, oh yeah, she was alright, yeah, I'll go and get another one now. You know, there's that kind of attitude. And there's a lot of young girls who are lonely and really they crave love and a relationship, and in their search for that they can be abused and used. Really, they are being used multiple times. Their need for love and friendship and connection and a relationship is being exploited, because they just don't understand that this man or boy they're relating with, she's not a human being. She's there for him to conquer and enjoy. So, and a lot of girls just do not understand that. You know, they don't understand it. They genuinely believe that this person is interested in them because they are who they are. Oh, I like you. But no, they don't. They just like what you've got between your legs and what you've got stuck to your chest, and they want to have a fiddle about with it and then go and brag to all the mates, and they do it regularly. And then the girl gets called a slag, you see. And this is what is happening. And as I say, we do need to change it, and we're not going to change it simply by arresting and imprisoning these people. I think we have to try therapy with them or give them drugs, but either way they must never be allowed to wander about freely in society, because they're dangerous people. They're dangerous. They're a danger to children. They are actually a terrorist threat. So, I've written to the MOJ demanding that the word minor, the legal term minor, be removed from defining a child. And I've explained children are very important people. They are VIPs, and it's about time we started treating them like that. And helping parents more to care for children. And it really does need a revolution. I'm not talking about a riotous bloody revolution, but we need a revolution in our thinking and the way our whole society is run, because let's face it, it is on exploitation and creating crimes and criminals. And as I say, the illegal drug trade, I think as well, has brought a lot of criminal elements together from all walks of life, and the paedophiles have got a hold in there, with the drugs side of it as well, because it's known that paedophiles commonly use drugs, and men who rape women commonly use all kinds of drugs. So, again, prohibition invites corruption. We know that. It was known from when prohibition against alcohol happened in America. Overnight, suddenly, half the police force were corrupt, involved in, buying and selling alcohol and turning a blind eye here and there. And before long, the whole of society was dealing with these gangland shootouts and wars between gangs over markets, and it just gets totally out of hand. And that is what's happening now with the drugs. But they knew it was going to happen, because people do profit from crime, and it's been an easy way. It's given police a reason to search people, to search people's homes. The courts, all of them dealing with it, they're all making money. All this legal aid that in the past used to be paid out. I mean, people can hardly get it now. Now they're removing that. I think prohibition against drugs, it just needs to end. It just needs to end. If people are going to people are still taking drugs even with the prohibition. There's a massive drug problem in Britain, and especially at the top. Again, privilege. Oh yeah, we can get... Yeah, I've got a mate in the police force, he sorts me out. Yeah, need a bit of petty cash. Oh wait, there's a bag of coke. I know a couple of people you can pass it on to. Yeah, you get the money, don't worry. If they'll pay. If they get caught, we might... we're a bit low on our drugs numbers, conviction and arrest of drug sellers. Who can we get rid of out of our people that we know now? Who's been a bit of a naughty lad, not giving us the full whack, maybe cutting us short a bit. Yeah, let's get him, her, him. Oh yeah, there you go, we've done our arrest quota. Oh, there's another gang moved in. They're not connected to the police. They're taking our market. Oh right, we'll go and arrest all now. And as I say, it's about connecting dots. Everybody can do dot to dot, can't they? And get the picture, as it were. And we need to accept that picture for what it is. Because at the end of the day, that's what the dots have created. A picture of a corrupt police force, a corrupt government, a corrupt council. We know we've got corrupt bankers. And then imagine what it's like for the majority, because the majority aren't involved in those crimes. Imagine what it's like for the majority of people who have to work in those organisations, and what kind of coercion and pressures they have to face. And, you know, ask yourself why Ofsted has had to establish a whistleblowers helpline for concerned professionals who are too scared to speak out to their local police or local authorities, because they know they're going to be persecuted, or they are actually being threatened. And I just think it's a waste of time, even trying to address any crime. If you can't remove the criminals from power, they are going to ensure that a steady supply of criminals is being raised within every generation. And as I say, we are the last living line of defence now between one world and the next. And I really don't think, as intelligent human beings, compassionate, responsible human beings, we can let this carry on. And I think we need to understand, you know, that the police and social workers and members of local authorities and government who's working in their offices, you know, they need our help. They need the public help as well, to give them strength and support to root out the corruption. So, you know, it shouldn't be a thing where everybody just suddenly hates the police, because that just leaves the good people within the police force even more trapped. And, you know, I don't care what anybody says. I know that the police, there are abusers and criminal elements within it, because they are attracted to the power of it. But at the same time, you know, a lot of them do a really good job, and they are needed and appreciated by all the people that they've genuinely helped. And that's the approach that we need to take. We need to consider the good people and, you know, try our best to support them and to help them disclose and to out. And, you know, maybe we do need an amnesty of sorts as well, because some people are forced to be complicit in crimes, because if they don't, then they're not trusted and life's going to be bad. And we all know that goes on at school, it goes on everywhere. So, you know, I hope that this video has helped people to think about the issue more, and to, you know, consider it as a whole, and also encourage people, like I say, take action, pick up your pen, write and ask, because we have rights, and it's about time we use them before they take them all away. Thank you, bye.